I guess.
I don't know why I laugh so much at that, but I do. Ta-da!
Good morning.
Good morning. How are we doing today? Welcome to the Sun Dragon Sideshow.
The Dear Becky and Lizzy, but we don't have any questions edition.
You sound like you're already tired for next week.
Well,
which,
you know,
we probably are. Hi, I'm Rebecca. I feel like the microphone's pointing at me. I'm the owner of Sun Dragon Art and Fiber in sunny, probably going to be mild, not super hot today, Brevard, North Carolina.
I'm Liz. I'm the minion there.
I saw that it's maybe going to get to the mid-60s today.
Almost 70.
Really?
Yeah.
So maybe warmer than yesterday?
Yeah.
How's the wind going to do today?
I haven't looked. I think the wind is supposed to be a little less. But
one of our Colorado watchers, shout out to Janelle, was talking about how she has 80 mile an hour gusts, so once she moves here, she'll 20 miles an hour will be just fine. It actually wasn't as windy yesterday as we thought it was going to be.
Yeah,
so that was nice.
It was.
It was much windier on Tuesday. So we don't have any questions today, and I don't know if I'm ready to say I'm totally coming out of a migraine yet. It definitely hit yesterday, and that was just miserable by the end of the day. And I went to bed at like 8 yesterday. Yeah. I have some afterglow, which sounds too positive for that. So, which means if things don't go well, I'm going to go back down into the hole. So we'll see. I have taken some medicine. I still haven't, I had a knitter. I'm going to totally be like squirrely today. So, I had,
not a thing.
but more squirrely than normal because of my migraine. I had a knitter who suggested trying non-drowsy Dramamine who came by, and I remember that this morning, but I still don't have any yet. So I can't test it yet to see how that works. And I was trying to explain to Liz, not all migraines are the same, first of all. I can talk about my experience with migraines. When people are like, oh, and I think people who don't get migraines might have the perception that I'm just sitting here with my head pounding and in pain. And it's not so much that. Like, I'm not in the pain phase right now. It's like my brain is not functioning correctly, I was saying to Liz. And I think Liz has had migraines too, so she gets it. I think a lot of us have had a migraine at some point in our lives, maybe. But for people who haven't, I'm not sitting here like, ow, 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 ow. Yesterday my face felt funny and kind of hurt. Like, whole face. That's another fun thing that can happen. It's like your brain just isn't working right. So I bet a lot of the things that happen with migraines, like my face feels funny, my sensitivity to light, the nausea, the sensitive everything, it's that like things are misfiring in my brain or connections aren't going right. So when body parts feel funny, I think it's because the brain doesn't know how to process information coming at it or something.
Yeah.
That's a very that's my unscientific trying to look at it scientifically description. It's just like, yeah. Yeah, things just aren't working right currently. I'm trying to like not repeat words and trying to be eloquent then makes me slow down a lot too. So we'll see where this takes us today. We're going to film, and I forgot to take off old videos, so hopefully this won't stop mid. It shouldn't. I haven't built up that many videos yet. Yeah. But, again, squirreling. You're going to see a lot of stream of consciousness. You're going to see a lot of maybe me either saying the wrong words or completely switching topics and not realizing or something like that. Losing my focus, that kind of thing. So, I had thoughts about things we could talk about today, and we'll see what we get to or where we go or, that kind of thing. You're making more zombie yarn.
I have 200-gram balls of zombie yarn done, and every time I find scraps, I keep adding them to...
I brought in some scraps
today
from
and
home.
I'm adding them into
The one you're
The
currently
one
working
I'm
on?
currently... And this one has a strip of... You can't see it from there. That's
The yarn
Dark
baby?
Side of the Moon.
I was going to say, apparently we're connected more at the brain than we think because the words are failing for Liz too right now. Dark Side of the Moon is a really, really old yarn baby color that was fantastic that we brought in. She already had it in her repertoire. I don't think it's in there anymore. But back when we opened the shop, it was in her repertoire as like a Pink Floyd thing because it was mostly black, and then like these pastel neon pop in just one little section. It's like for the trend right now of assigned pooling, it would be fantastic, absolutely fantastic. We don't have much yarn in the shop that would actually works for assigned pooling,
and just a caveat on that, she hasn't dyed it in years.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not available anymore.
Yeah.
But the month we opened the shop in 2017 is when that eclipse happened. That like went right overhead. I think total eclipse was over at my old school at Raven Gap, about an hour and a half away from here. We were at like 90% or somewhere between 90% and 100%.
I went to Columbia because I could get 3 minutes of totality instead of 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Yes, that's before you were my minion, so there wasn't a reason for you to be here.
Yeah.
But we were just right outside on the plaza. I say we as in the family unit I used to be a part of was right outside on the plaza to like and oh my gosh, this is taking me down memory lane. We were up against where this building would now be, but it was just a construction fence at the time. So, but we were up against it, kind of like trying to look up with the glasses and the things but we brought in her yarn because of the eclipse. We also had one called Total Eclipse that we took photos from online, and we were like, okay, so can you try Dark Side of the Moon, but can we have more of a saturated rainbow than a pastel rainbow? Like, with the neon colors, can we have it be darker colors? And that one sold really well for us, too, but
we had there was Dark Side of the Moon, Light Side of the Moon, Total Eclipse, and there was one
Black Hole was one of her other colors that was like purple and stuff. I have that in one of the shop samples. It was purple and speckly. Anything that's astronomical, we were like, let's get lots of this for the eclipse. The funny thing was that when we observed the total eclipse in person, the halo around the eclipse was the neon colors of Dark Side of the Moon. So we had her dye up one that had deeper colors for like rainbow for photography we'd seen, but in person it was Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah.
Bam, right? Anyway, don't have it in the shop anymore, sorry.
And when we met, you were opening up Yarn Baby.
I might have a sample in this thing.
Box. No, You've
already cannibalized
it's mini skeined.
Good. Awesome. Okay.
Or it's not mini skeined. It's
mini bags of mystery.
Minion bags of mystery.
When we met, what?
You were opening the Yarn Baby box
that had some Dark Side of the Moon in it, or something.
It had the Dark Side of the Moon, the Total Eclipse, and I remember going, "When do you open?" 'Cause yeah.
And I'm forgetting how just because we had it there on the thing. I feel like there was something else I was going to say before we got down that rabbit hole. And it's gone now. So I'm not going to worry about it. Okay. Speaking of Yarn Baby, I finished my local yarn store day shawl. It is not blocked. And it is not as symmetrical as I thought it was going to be. I think she had to change when the decreases start, which is that bottom point right there, which is right over my belly, so people wouldn't more effectively use 2 skeins of yarn, which means the bottom tip, the bottom corner down there, is not necessarily in the middle, because like if I take this side and hold it up, see, I can't stretch out my arms much more than this. But if I take roughly the center point at the top and show you the other side, I can stretch all the way out. So when I block it, I might try to fix that a little bit with my blocking, but I might also let it be an asymmetrical, but still kind of trying to be a symmetrical triangle shawl. It's like in between a crescent shawl and like this one. I'm holding it up. I feel like I could shape it to be a crescent shawl with blocking, but I'm gonna pull this point down and out as far as I can. It was really neat to do this because it was just different. Like there was stuff to keep you entertained the whole time. And it started over here. And there's a center double decrease. So I know I've showed it off before, but that line running down the middle there, that affects the shaping. There's like no way to hold this up and have you see all of it, especially pre-blocking. But that line, because you stop increasing on one side down here, eventually runs into the bottom of the far side. Like it runs right there out to the edge. So this is going to be my top edge. And I might try blocking my top edge straight, but I might also let it bow a little like a crescent shawl. And then I'll pull this one down. This is once I've soaked it and spun out the water. Pull this one down and try to make the sides be as straight as possible. The bind off is actually only part of the far side. Like this part of what's going to be the far side to the corner actually was part of my rose and not my bind off. But then this part to the end, it's really hard to describe, but it's very cool when it's done. And one of our, I think it was Edith, shout out to Edith, one of our knitters on Virtual Sit and Stitch showed a shawl from a different pattern writer that has the same type of construction. Like this has become a more popular method of construction. So I love that Casapinka is might be introducing it to some people who haven't tried it yet. Yeah, so we have like the shorter side is where all the funky let's experiment while it's not too long yet. And then the other side has a lot of, like from back here, I'm looking at what the camera is filming and it just looks busy. And then if you see it a little further up close, we have zigzags going in all different directions, which I really like. So this was really fun. And because I haven't made progress on a lot of other things because I focused on this one mostly for at least the past week and a half. I went home last night and brought this home. So I'm like, I'll block it. It'll be great. And my brain would not let me do anything. My brain didn't even let me do dishes last night. Like, I heated up leftovers. I ate them. I did a couple rows of knitting and I went to bed. Went
to the grocery store and told Bernie, hey, start the oven for a pizza because my brain has got just enough to get home.
Uh-huh.
And, yeah. I think
okay
we were both in bed by 8.
We're probably going to have pizza for lunch today, too. That's okay, because it's different
box pizza. It's different
pizza.
It's different
pizza. So it's like a different meal. Okay. Oh, good, because I couldn't handle making lunch when I got up this morning either.
It's okay. I was like, oh, that'll work. Yeah, whatever.
I am done with all but the bind off on my shawl, my pressed flowers shawl. I was trying to explain to someone who stopped by for Sit and Stitch yesterday about how I think she'd gotten the message from Carol that this is our spring knit along, so she then thought every spring we do this pattern. And I was like, no, I'm trying to do like seasonal or quarterly knit alongs or crochet alongs, so I call them make alongs in general. And they'll be different every year. It's not like we'll do the same one every April. We could, but I feel like that would get a little repetitive. That's fun. I'm looking how that looks in the camera just to stretch out this little part of it. Like, I'm done with the knitting. I have finished the contrast color. I've done there's like 2 rows with the main color. Once you're done. Some of our knitters ran out of yarn with this. And their skeins of yarn maybe had 10 yards left, less per skein than this one did. All I can think, and they needed like a whole third skein. This yarn has 260 yards on it. All I can think is their gauge must have been very different, or the way the yarn knits up, because they used a different yarn.
Gauge can affect so much.
Really, I mean, that's something we could talk about as a Dear Becky and Lizzy type thing, is a lot of times with shawls and cowls and small things, and often with hats, even though they're supposed to fit, they're small. So people are like, us included, They're like, let's just grab the needles and grab the yarn and go.
Why would you swatch?
Why would you swatch for something like a shawl? If it comes out too big or too small, who cares? When it might matter and you might want to care is if you only have so much yarn. If you buy the yarn that the pattern writer recommends for a project, but your gauge is different, you could end up with a lot more or a lot less yarn.
Well, and we've talked about it here before, too, that there are a lot of older knitters who remember patterns back in the day that were all written to about the same gauge.
Because they had big companies, and that you had to fit that gauge to work for that company.
And now with all the pattern writers that have come after, they're like, I'm going to do this pattern on my gauge. The gauge that they like.
The pattern writer has their own gauge.
Yeah.
And our knitters will be like, I'm an on-gauge knitter. And it's like, that phrase might not mean the same thing anymore. Might not have the same meaning.
I would say that it's not that you're on gauge anymore. It's that your tension is completely even. Which is great. But that's not the gauge for the pattern.
Yeah, and even if your tension is even, that might not relate to the gauge for the pattern at all.
Yeah.
And there are so many yarns that are different. Like, I feel like some of our knitters also may be speaking from an era where all worsted weight yarns were really roughly about the same thickness, because we had like 3 companies making yarn, and they all came out roughly the same size. And now we've got all these different yarn companies and all these different varieties and such a range within a worsted weight, which is like a number 4 with the numbers. But you might have the thin end of it and the thick end of it, but they still fit into roughly the right amount of wraps per inch. So they're all called worsted, but they're all going to knit up differently. Like the Pressed Flowers cowl I made is the best example of that. Of the yarn I used was technically a DK, and the pattern calls for a DK on a 6, but it was a really thin DK. And I used 2 of the same yarn. They're both really they both have over 380 yards on a 100-gram skein, which is more like a sport weight. Which, we have people from Europe who come in, or especially the UK, and they're like, I don't know what that means, because sport is kind of a in-between classification from fingering and DK, what they would call 4-ply, and I think they also call DK over there. But it's because we started to subdivide and say we need a classification for this in-between thing. But there's in-betweens the in-betweens, or like a range in... It's...
Well, and then you throw in the chainettes that look thinner or whatever compared to what...
The yardage is not going to tell you what weight it is because it's lighter, so you get more yardage out of it, but they want you to let it fluff up or have a hollow core, so they're going to classify it as a thicker yarn than the yardage implies.
Yeah. We have a lot of people that look at the yarn and go, well, that doesn't look like... Exactly. Or like even a fingering weight that has kind of fluffed a little bit, and they're like, well, that's too thick to be a fingering weight or sock,
And it's because yarn companies are changing up how they classify or how they feel a yarn should be knitted.
Like this yarn right here this is considered a DK.
That's a DK.
It's the cotton and...
Is that the chichi? Not the chichi, the concha.
Concha, yeah. It's 1-ply is cotton and 1-ply is wool. It has 437 yards per 100 grams, and it's considered a DK.
Which usually a DK has maybe 250, 260 to maybe at most 300 yards. For most of the ones that are in that classification, they'd be under 300 yards. And then we have the yarns that are called, that consider themselves DK, that are 380. Yeah. And it's like... So it's really hard when someone comes in with a pattern that calls for a DK weight yarn, and we show them stuff, and they're like, this one's so pretty! And it's a lot thinner, so the gauge is going to be totally different. Or people who come in and say, but the label gauge says... And that's another misleading thing, because depending on what needle they're suggesting, like if someone brings in a pattern... that says we need this gauge for the pattern. They will look for that gauge on the ball band, but that doesn't mean they're going to get that gauge when they knit with it, because also that gauge may not match up with the needles that the pattern wants. It's like, it's not as standardized as it used to be. And some of that is a really good thing, and some of that is very frustrating for people who want things to fit in the boxes they used to.
Yep.
So, like, to go back to this guy that I'm making, that I do love how it came out. I have to get used to how busy the colors are at the end because the rows are so long. I have at least half a skein here, I want to say, of my second ball of yarn. And I can't remember how much the pattern says you're supposed to use of your contrast. I do know that my gauge is a little tighter than hers, probably, although hers also says after blocking. I'm very reticent to block my gauge swatches because I don't want to aggressively block, and then I don't aggressively block my final piece. This I'm going to aggressively block to try to get as big as hers, because I see the picture of her, and unless she's a teeny tiny person, like, this is half my shawl right here, and then my other half, I want to say that's, oh, hang on, it's spread out over here, so it's easier to,
well, that, and
yeah, actually it might
it'll
not
be 2 yards.
It'll be, yeah, this is about the length, like when I hold out a circular needle and then it touches my collarbone right here, I know it's a 32-inch circular needle. Yep. And if it goes past that, I know I'm holding a 40-inch because those are the sizes we carry in the shop. So this probably, the width of the top of it, unblocked, is over 60 inches, over 5 feet. I want to say her, oh, wait, I've got the pattern here. Migraine brain. It just looks a lot bigger on her picture. And deeper. I think I can block it to close to those measurements, but I'm not sure how much give I have on the edges. So, like this picture of her here, like it looks huge. It looks just massive. And mine's not going to be that massive, but I also didn't test my gauge before I started.
You'll have 2 yards, so you'll have 6 feet across the top.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm looking for finished measurement 72 across. That's 6 feet, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And 33 inches deep at the center point after gentle blocking. I might have to do some aggressive blocking to get that myself. I can't tell because I haven't done the bind off. And the sewn bind off, I think, is supposed to be stretchy if you don't pull tight on it. The sewn bind off for however many stitches I have, I'm going to need. I was glad I did not run out of yarn. This is probably at least a quarter skein right here. I'm going to have a really long tail to start doing my sewn bind off for this. And what could happen is I may not leave a long enough tail for the whole bind off, in which case I'll have to pull off another piece and start again and have more ends to weave in. That's probably going to be my guess. Might try. Yes?
That is 100% not superwash wool.
So
you could spit join it.
I could make my tail not super long, and when I need to attach more, I could spit join it. That's fun. Yay! For people who haven't seen spit joining, we did it in a video. I don't remember which one at this point because we have so many videos. Let me see. I want to see what the schematic here. I think there's a schematic at the end. But, I mean, I just found the measurements. So, like, I was surprised that unblocked, I can spread it on a barber cord over my filming station, and it doesn't hang off the edges. Like, this one did the same thing that I showed off before I blocked it. This one was teeny tiny, and now it's super deep. It's like, I want to say this one is only a little more than 5 feet wide, though. Yep. Or 5, like, I'm 5'4", maybe 5'3". In my taller shoes, I'm 5'5", but I don't wear shoes like that anymore. So they say that your arm length usually for a typical person is about how tall you are. So, so this is like at most 5.5 feet wide, and I don't think that one is yet, but we'll see what happens when I block it. So, this one got bigger with blocking it, but I did also aggressively block it. And it may shrink up a little over time. That's the thing, is not everything when you block it keeps its shape, and that can be dependent on fiber and the buoyancy of the fiber and how much you've stretched it. And lots of things can affect that, and I'm not the expert at predicting that. So, although I did do some fun math with someone this week to try to figure out from a swatch if she had enough yarn for a blanket with crochet. And I told her like 10 times, I'm like, in theory, this is how the math works. In reality, I don't know.
You're getting into that quantum realm of...
Right? Of like, it should work, but like if your gauge changes over the course of a long blanket that you're crocheting, that could come out very different. There's a lot of unknown quantities. I don't know if this has a swat.
And we had somebody schematic come in that was finishing a blanket, who it was for a family whose mom was getting sick and dying, and she'd started a blanket before that, and to watch her gauge change through, you know, just everyday life and, you know, how it changed.
And at first, the knitter who came in was really worried about that, and asked the family, should I pull back to where it matches what I'm doing? And they said no, and I think that was the right call, because then you have this documented piece of the end of someone's life. Like, not to look at it morbidly, but you can see how she was towards the end, or that it's a piece of her at the very end.
Yeah.
Of her time with us. So I wouldn't rip that out for the world. Like, that's history right there. So
well, and when I was learning to crochet, I found that your mood changes your tension. Like,
yeah, and I'm pretty consistent even when I have a migraine or a mood or a thing, but it's not going to be perfect. That's more the, I think, the thing to have to try to grapple with, is that things aren't going to be perfect. There's spots on this sweater, whether it's because I put it down for a long time, like especially the ridges where I picked up the sleeve stitches again and set off, or just a row that the stitches don't have the same gauge as the rest of it, and that didn't get fixed with blocking, and I kind of have to just live with it.
Well, and some of that comes with time and, you know, time knitting, that eventually you settle into, you know, more of a...
Yeah, but I absolutely cannot tell you why the spots that are different are different. Was it because I was knitting for a long time? Was it because I had just picked it back up again? I have no clue.
Yeah. Like,
I couldn't guarantee you that look at this section. That's because I was knitting for a while and it was all consistent. In theory. We have a lot of in theory right now, right? So, but I'm glad I have like, there's the downside with the color changing yarn is I have all these bright colors I'm not going to get to. Like, so where teals and pinks combine, I'm not going to get to. On this shawl, do I want to do another project, or do I want this to become a minion bag of mystery? I don't know. I mean, it's probably going to become a minion bag of mystery, because let's be honest, I don't have time to do other things, like, other than the butterfly chasing I do for the shop. So, like, the leftovers from these socks, I was going to make another pair of socks for myself. And then I realized I'm not going to do that. I handed them off to Liz. Like, who's going to have time for that?
I
handed them off to Liz to become mini skeins, right?
Skeins, and I think there's a minion ball of one of them.
Ooh. So, okay, this is what we should finish on. Speaking of the crawl. We've already mentioned we're going to do maybe some short videos next week. Maybe a shop tour. Probably not a VSC, a virtual shopping channel. I was like, hey Liz, maybe we could show off some of the yarns that will be here from Indie Dyers and things next week. But the struggle with that is a struggle with just how wide our community is next week is going to be an in-shop event. We've had multiple years, we've had people say, hey, is there a virtual aspect to the crawl? Like, we'd love to do that. And our answer right now for the foreseeable future is no, there is not a virtual aspect to the crawl.
It's very difficult for us to split, like, because it's just us. Because we haven't figured out how to make certain in-shop things work online as well.
Well, and the very nature of the crawl is based on, like, we have giveaways. We have things you can enter into daily. It's based on coming into the shop. It's based on visiting. You don't have to buy from us, but it is based on you made it to the shop physically. And if we open that up to anyone who wanted to order online, whether they've watched us a million times or it's their first time in, and hello and welcome to everybody, we can't do that. It's too challenging and in some ways not fair.
And yesterday we were talking about it as a bunch of us sitting outside, that yes, there are things that people have made virtual that used to be in place, like 5Ks, and you can virtually tour different things.
That too,
This is more like a pub crawl where you kind of have to go to the pub to
to taste the beer. It's and a lot of, like, I'd love to show you stuff and put stuff up online instantly, but we need the product to be here in the shop at least for next week. And then if we have leftovers, we're happy to put them online. If we have a way of giving you all a discount, we can't, like one of the things we do for certain items in the shop, there's actually, it's most of what's in the shop, there are just some exclusions, is we have spin the wheel of discounts at checkout. And last year I looked into, like, how can we do this online as well? I tried to have, like, a random code generator or a random discount generator to have that sense of spontaneity also online. And it was really hard, especially without paying for it, which we don't have the resources to do. It was really, really hard to figure that out. So
it was, yes, the tech is there. Yes, it is feasible for a price that you can't afford this month. So
it was just, And so the crawl really is, it's an in-person experience. And we also understand that we are people's local yarn store from far away. And we don't intentionally want to exclude you, but this is the kind of thing that can't really happen in both places. Yeah. We have kept so many far away opportunities, like our virtual sit and stitch is super popular right now, and we love that. Our once a month virtual stuff. We have a lot of online sales. We have a lot of sales for YouTube only. We've been dallying right around that.
I know.
$14.90. We were at $14.90 last night, and we're back to $14.89 today. Like, with subscriber levels.
$14.90 this morning when I woke up and checked it, and
by the time I checked it, it was $14.89. Yep. So, like, when we hit $1,500, we're gonna have a sale. Only for, like, we're not gonna publicize it anywhere but on YouTube, for our YouTube subscribers for a limited amount of time. That will probably have to wait till after the crawl. But then people who watch us from anywhere, we at this point we only regularly ship within the US, like all the US, not the continental US, or the land bound. Like, we can do other places, but they have to be within the US realm. United States realm. We have on occasion done things to far away, but there are a lot of risks and caveats that those people who are in other countries need to be willing to accept and be okay with. And then we work that out one-on-one with people. But as much as we can. It may not be right after the crawl, because right after the crawl we're going to go home and die for 4 days. But as soon as we can, we'll get the leftovers from the crawl, the cool things that we still have in the shop that you might be interested in. We'll get them up online.
I remember that yarn, but I don't know what. I'm sorry, I'm squirreling.
I want to say that, no.
I don't know. It's a hand-dye.
It
could have been from laces? A long time ago. Because
I was going to say it might either be that sock yarn that you bogarted, but it wasn't speckly. That might be oxygen.
No.
No? Okay. Never mind.
I had no oxygen because I bogarted a lot of oxygen.
Lorna's laces. Anyway, so we hope you all have a fantastic weekend. We will have Sit and Stitch tomorrow night from 7 to 9 p.m. will be the last time that we have Sit and Stitch for a couple weeks. The next sit and stitch after that will be 2 Fridays after that. So if you try to join our Zoom meeting group on any Tuesday or Friday for the next week and a half after tomorrow, we won't be there. And that's because we'll be trying to rest up for the next busy day of the crawl. And it really is an experience. It's not necessarily, I'm not going to be like, hey, go buy a plane ticket and come, because I don't know if it's that exciting of an experience to like spend the money on the travel. But it's fun. We have a different experience of it than the people who are doing it, in that we just have all these people coming in and out, and we get to meet a lot of people, and we see our regulars, but we also see people we might be seeing for the first time.
Our experience tends to be the villagers in a village with a bunch of Vikings coming. And they're fun, cool, happy
they're
Vikings.
Cool Vikings, but they just keep coming in and out.
But we're the villagers, and
I feel like
sometimes the villager or the Vikings come and hang, and like do a spontaneous sit and stitch outside. So
we don't require masks inside for shopping, but we also don't encourage you to sit for long periods of time inside. We won't have the space to do it anyway during the crawl. We'll have an indie dyer here on Tuesday. In fact, we may want to film early on Tuesday to get out of her way.
That's
if
why
she comes to set
we're
up.
probably doing our shop tour.
Yeah. And our other spot will have some of our unique things to the crawl. So there won't be room inside to do that anyway. And we don't encourage people, regardless, to hang out for long periods of time inside. If that's the case, it's a lesson and you have a mask on. But anyway, we have to open the shop up soon. We have whittled our way through like 36 minutes.
I have to tie that to something.
She has all kinds of yarn down the front of her dress. So we gotta go. We will be back on Tuesday and Thursday of next week in a limited capacity. And then we will see you all. We won't be filming the Tuesday after that.
We need to get a newspaper for Thursday. Proof of life.
Yeah, right. To put up in front. Say, we did actually film this on Thursday. I'm sure we could arrange that in some fashion. Anyway, if you'd like to come to Virtual Sit and Stitch tomorrow night, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern U.S. time, on Zoom, get in when it says the join code, you put in the shop phone number.
828-877-3550.
And we'll see you then. And other than that, we'll see you when we can.
Bye.
Buckle up and enjoy the ride. Bye.